What are you doing?
What do you mean? Like I want to go home smelling like a meth lab?
Yeah, I do. Those are staying on, right?
Come on. Daylight's burning. He seems unique.
You know what? Give me that 1 second. 1 second. Yeah, right here at the top it says, "To WW, my star, my perfect silence." Now, who do you suppose that means? Woodrow Wilson? Willy Wonka? Walter White?
You got me.
Frenzy Podcast.
Hey, how's it going, my friends? This is Nick from the Nerd Frenzy Podcast. And today, we get to talk about possibly the best show of all time, Breaking Bad. And we have the amazing pleasure to always get to bring back David Ray Suminski the first, everyone.
I know. Good to be here.
Yes, sir.
We talk about probably the best TV show ever made.
Yeah, bitch!
It was a tie with Game of Thrones until season, 8 or 7?
Yeah,
Completely.
Game of Thrones, and they did that thing too where the first, I think 5 seasons or 4 seasons, they had everything in the book to put on paper and whatnot and then make the screenplay with it. So they had themselves plenty of good stuff, but then all of a sudden the books stop coming, and then they have to somehow, they just get pretty much like, I'm sure it was detailed, but it was like an outline detailed version of what to put in there from George R.R. Martin, and then we saw pretty much a rushed project afterwards. But one thing that was definitely not rushed, David Ray, is the amazing Breaking Bad. 5 seasons from start to finish, I would say pretty much for the most part was perfect.
Yeah, it was a flawless show pretty much. I can't think of too many things I didn't like about it. It ran the perfect amount of seasons. Although you would love to watch more, but the way it was going, it couldn't have really gone too much longer. Didn't think I was gonna like it at first because it being about drugs and like all that kind of like. I'm not gonna watch that show. That sounds silly. It took me I was a late bloomer to the show. It took me 5 years or more till it already come out. It was already finished for me to even watch the first episode. I think you convinced me to watch it, actually.
Well, of course, I had to. It's one of those things too, and I think the very first thing I said to you, in fact, was, "Hey, man, so this show's about meth," and I think you're like, "No, thanks, man," and like, "No, no, okay, hey, it's about meth, but it's about so much, bigger things than that," and I don't know how I did it. I mean, I'm proud of myself for doing that, but then you watched it, and I was nervous about telling you, because I thought, well, it is a drug show. I mean, maybe you just came back, dude, I watched the first episode and it's a drug show. I'm like, okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah, but then you're like, dude, okay, wow, this is crazy. And then you see the character development, especially between Walter White and a little between Jesse Pinkman, and it breaks your heart. From what we see these guys start to what we see them become. And then you see almost certain characters do great things that are piece of crap typically, aka Jesse. He ends up kind of almost being the anti-hero of this show in a lot of small ways, because he's still a loser and whatnot, but the choice he makes typically is like, hey, I want to do the right thing. And then you have the main character, Mr. Walter White, whose goal pretty much is just to be selfish.
Mm-hmm. And initially it was just help himself and his family for the money for his cancer. But then he started to enjoy what he was doing, I wouldn't say hurting people, but showing his power and showing how good of a chemist he really was. And yeah, he just wanted to.
He got screwed over by the other 2 people, and from gray matter, and because he had obviously a relationship with her, and then she went for, I forget the character's name, but and it kind of pissed off Walt, and then I think his ego was hurt, and then he's like, well, screw you guys, and then they become billionaires, and then of course he has that whole like resentment for the rest of his life, and it kind of, you could see, I think the very first episode you could see kind of he was just kind of like almost like he's been beat down a lot, and luckily the difference between something like American Beauty where his whole family were just pretty much treating each other like crap. This was actually a pretty solid family who had very good moral values and whatnot. And then you see they have to suffer because of his bull crap too. It's even though it is the best, maybe the best quality, and I would match it with Game of Thrones for most Game of Thrones, of course. There's the crazy thing about it is it shows the pretty much rise and then fall of this character this character who's not that different from people like you and me, and it just shows what certain things can do to cause you to make such a crazy decision that you're like, wow, what you just killed a man, Walt. I mean, okay, here we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was so hard to like. It was like you're cheering for him and against him because he's like an innocent teacher who's just trying to survive cancer, but then he starts killing people and selling drugs, obviously, and lying to his family and wife and friends and brother-in-law, and it's like, ugh, you want to cheer for him, but you're like, stop doing these bad things. You want him to win, but you don't want him to win at the same time. It's weird. It's a weird. That's what makes it good, I guess.
And like you don't see superheroes flying around or the devil trying to take over Earth. You see real interactions and real consequences for decisions that are made. And you're absolutely right when you said a minute ago. At first, his idea of making meth was to 100% cover him passing away. That was 100% what it was. And at first, and I think that's probably why you have this like hard, debacle back and forth between your soul and you're sitting there going, well, come on, man, stop. And it's because he started off being a good man, but kind of a broken man, but still a good man. And then you just see kind of him turn into not only the villain, but maybe the most evil villain of the whole show because he thinks he's the good guy.
Yep.
It's almost cringeworthy, but the storytelling by Vince Gilligan is he's the man. I mean, he's done this and then Better Call Saul, and I was nervous for Better Call Saul, but that is as you and I both watched it, also an excellent show. It's definitely not Breaking Bad, but if Breaking Bad's a 10, I would say Better Call Saul is an 8.5. I mean, what would you think?
Yeah, I think so. If I was gonna pick one or the other one to watch, it's definitely Breaking Bad. Mm-hmm. But yeah, every episode of Better Call Saul has gotten better every season. It's like, ooh, whoa. Like the first season was kind of slow with the lawyer stuff, but then it just picked up and got better and better.
It started connecting with the Breaking Bad world. Yep.
Yep. It's like we're wondering if we're going to see a cameo Walter White in there somehow, but it'd be kind of hard. But it'd be cool though, of course. We'd love to see it.
It would have to be when he was still a teacher. And not because having it being that close to them starting to make the meth, it would have to be like months beforehand. If they want to have the last episode or last season, which I think they're doing two more, which is crazy that they're doing at least one more than Breaking Bad. And I figured this is one of those like, hey, we have this little juice right here. Let's just squeeze a little bit more because everyone likes Saul, everyone likes Bob Odenkirk. He's genius. Let's just do a quick 1 season, 2 season show. But then all of a sudden it's like, hey, this show has the same exact kind of balls as Breaking Bad does. It's crazy. And I don't care at all about lawyers. I don't want to watch a show about a lawyer because for the most part lawyers are scum, right? That's what we all look at. But guess what? Vince Gilligan does again to where he actually brings us into this lawyer world, and then he sees certain situations happen the same way Breaking Bad happens, and all because of Breaking Bad, baby. I love it.
Yep. Maybe the second season, you said they're doing 2 more. If they do maybe the second one can be like an overlap where they have some of what's going on in Breaking Bad happen that we don't see in Better Call Saul. That'd be cool.
Yes, absolutely, would be cool, and it would be as long as I mean, if they want to just have that quick little like, hey, there's Walter White, and he's hanging out with Jesse for like their third cook
Yeah,
around that time, that'd be kind of cool to see that. But I think it'd be even more effective, and I think it'd be more Vince Gilligan style, anyways, to actually have. Even if it's small, like an episode, to have something that's integral to Walter White that maybe gives him more depth than he already has as a character, which Vince Gilligan is very good at doing that. So who knows?
yeah, like they did that in the El Camino movie show, whatever. That was a movie, I guess. You call it.
Yeah, movie. Yep.
They snuck him in. They always make him look like a good guy, which is why I'm always like, I know he's like your least. He's like, you think he's a bad guy, but then like in that show, they make him look like he's looking out. He's always looking out for his family and Jesse most of the time, at least.
Well, when he's looking out for Jesse, it's you typically like whenever he let Jane die, he was looking
Yeah,
out. He was pissed off at Jesse. He was pissed off at Jesse, and because I remember the few episodes before that, he wouldn't give Jesse his money because he was kind of pissed off at him, and then because Jesse's like, oh well, I'm going to go to was it no, New Zealand with her, and we're going to be performing artists or something like that. And he's just like, oh, that's a dumb idea. And what he was really saying is no, because I need you here. And it's just a typical Walter White thing. It's like, dude, what makes you so special? Yes, you're doing all this stuff for your family, but even all the Gustavos and all the Tucos and all these, they have family too. I mean, it's the same. Like they love their family just like you love your family. And like, even Tuco being as crazy as he was, if you had a gun pointed to his uncle Hector, he would freak out because that's his uncle. I mean, so that's one thing. Yes, we are in the narrative of Walter White, so it's easy to be like, oh yeah, I get what you're doing, buddy. But then whenever it comes to really important decisions, David, he usually chooses the evil one. And that's when I'm like, oh, no, you're a piece of shit. And you keep on having these little thoughts with yourself, and you still sometimes make the wrong move because at first it was because it was like hard decisions. But then at the end, it was more like, I want my Roman Empire, and you better not get in my way. And I'm like, dude, stop, man. Jeez. But wonderful.
Yeah, like the episode when Jane died. The first time I watched it, I didn't even realize he bumped her, which caused her to fall over and like lay on her back and choke to death. Like this, I had to watch it the second time, and I was like, oh, he actually is the reason she died.
Yep.
It's not that I mean, he could have rolled her over and saved her, and nothing would have happened. But yeah, and it was all because he wanted to keep. He's like, he almost did too. He was like, wait a second. I think I'm just gonna let her die so she stays out of my way and doesn't blackmail me or whatever.
Yeah.
So.
And the brilliant thing about it, David, that made it so hard to watch and so like, well, I'm conflicted, is because even as he's doing it, he's sitting there, he's crying, he's like freaking, he's like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? What am I doing? This is awful. This is awful. He's like he's allowing a life to end, and this is a man who, a month ago was, about ready to celebrate his son's birthday. It was just okay, and then now he's sitting there having to watch a young lady in her 20s suffocate because of his selfish ways, and even though but it shows like, hey, look, he obviously has feelings. He's not sitting there like, good, die, yes. He's sitting there like he's conflicted, and that is what makes, first of all, it makes better television or movies, because it's like, hey, guess what? We're all human, and we know what it looks like to see what it, when it unveils to the audience. So if it looks fake or corny, then it's going to look fake or corny. So yeah, but and I remember when Breaking Bad came out, and it came out.
Did you, as it was like coming out, or did you wait till later on to watch it?
So I watched the very first episode with my dad at his house. And then I was, funny enough, about ready to go into the military. So then I did not watch it until after boot camp, and then I started getting established, started getting internet, and then I'm like, oh, I'll go ahead and go get some DVDs or whatnot and catch up on certain things, and ended up getting Breaking Bad because I heard decent things about it, and then I started watching it, and I think I think I started watching it live, like with everyone else, season 3.
Nice. Yeah, it was good. Even the bad guys were all good. And like it's like, man, which leads me to my first question or two for you. Like, who was the scariest, or which bad guy would you not want to mess with, or who's the scariest bad guy? I guess you could say.
Well,
Like you got Tuco, the twin brothers, you got whoever else there was.
you have Gustavo.
Yeah,
You,
Gustavo.
you have Hector.
What were the brothers' names? They were just the twins, basically, right? They didn't really have names.
I think they had names in Better Call Saul, but I just don't remember them.
Oh yeah, I forgot they're in there too.
Yeah, they're in a good part of that because they're only in a few episodes of the Breaking Bad, and then Hank kills him, and that's when he gets shot by him like 2 or 3 times. But that was we'll talk about that in a minute. But I'm a fan, David, of any villain that is not very showy about being a villain. And even though like someone like Tuco is what a brilliant character that Raymond Cruz played there, and he's just always like he's like high on and he's just like, and he's, and at any moment, which even shows in one of the episodes where he just kills his like friend who's standing next to him because he's pissed off, and you're thinking like, oh, he's unhinged. That'd be a good way to put him, and that's scary. But it's, to me, it's an obvious scary, and I think that the brilliant genius is a silent genius, like someone who does stuff in the shadows and orchestrates things. And that is for me easily Gustavo.
Yep. And the brothers are pretty obvious about it too. They're carrying a giant axe and they're just going around killing people. Like, give me your bulletproof vest now. Boom.
Yeah, they're like the Terminator, pretty much. Yeah, and it's funny how there's no, like, there could be a cop right there just about ready to go, like, hey, what are you doing? And they just walk over and just shoot him.
Yeah, the two brothers are trying to get revenge for Walter killing Tuco. That's what I'm pretty sure about. Why they were.
That's what it is. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
This is like, oh, I need him for another 3 months, then you can kill him. But they're like, we need to kill him now. So they're like, well, let me give you someone else.
Yes, Gustavo. They wanted to kill Gustavo, and he said, no. I'm sorry. They wanted to kill Walter White, right?
Yeah.
And he says, no, he's a business associate. So how about you kill the man responsible, Hank Schroeder? And then they went to go kill him, and that's whenever he got him. But then sadly got wounded really badly, and it kind of screwed him up for a while. And that's another great character that I don't know how people feel about him generally, but me personally, he was one of my favorites. And I love his kind of obnoxious but yet kind-hearted love that he had for everyone. It's like, hey guys, hey, let me tell you a joke. But at the end of the day, he's the real hero of the actual show. I mean, the actual hero. And for him to be shot the way he did, like a dog, in front of Walt, causing all these things to kind of smack Walt right in the face of the realization that he's a piece of crap. And it was something that was probably for me, for the whole thing, harder than the whole Jane thing. It was the hardest thing to see Hank get killed, because Hank was the legitimate, like, I'm here to save the day, even though that I'm broken and stuff, my own self. I've seen a lot of crap that's haunting me, but yet I'm the hero. And then he gets shot like a piece of crap, and it really just, at that point, I remember, David, I hated Walt, and he was my least favorite character. And I mean least favorite character I hated him the most, because obviously Bryan Cranston, wow, you beautiful man, he carried the show to being the best show of all time.
Yeah, and I know what you mean, because it's his fault he got killed.
Yes, 100%.
The show is always so good at having like some bad guy that was even worse than Walter. Almost, it seemed like the Nazi guys were like, they're the ones that technically killed him, but it was still Walt's fault that they were out there in the first place.
Yes, because he called them, and then he tried to call it off, and they're like, well, we're not going to stop it now.
Yeah.
And plus they stole from him, too.
Yeah. That was probably my hardest episode to watch, too. I was like, oh, man, he's dead, now what? Now, you're like, I don't know, just, which that reminds me, is that what your hardest episode to watch was? Like, There were a lot of hard episodes to watch, but that one probably at the top.
Yes, that is definitely the hardest one for me to watch, and it is because like it's the buildup of Hank's character. I mean, at the end of the day, if you want to see a really proper conclusion, you want to see Hank probably at least take uh, Walt to jail and like, hey man, I'm going to be the one to get you, or something, or Hank going out going out shooting at the bad guys trying to shoot out at Walt or something like that, even though he knew Walt was a piece of crap or something. I don't know. And then he dies, but he dies a hero. But the way they killed him off, even though it was disgusting and it made me cringe. I mean, this is the stuff like that Gilligan himself is. I hope that he, after he's done with Better Call Saul, he does another show that has. It could be about anything. It could be about a plumber. I don't care, but it has the same kind of quality that allows for all these human experiences to make things more realistic, and he does it so well that make something about a plumber, make something about a janitor. I don't care what a custodian, anything you want to do, but I want to see this really amazing story play out like you've been doing. He's awesome.
Yeah, there was a lot of times he could have like backed off or just quit doing it, and it could have maybe saved his family. Like he had enough money at plenty of points where he could have been like, "All right, I'm good," but he kept getting a better offer from uh,
From
Gus,
someone, yeah, yeah.
or he just gets his pride gets in the way. He's like, "Oh, I can go make a little bit more money, or just I want to show off that this is my territory or whatever." It's just like, man, you could have made it. You could have been happy still, but you blew it. You had to keep getting greedy. All
Absolutely.
the
That's the name of the game, probably too, is greed.
like having sex with his wife in a car. He's like, I love it because it's illegal. Like all these things, he wanted it to be bad. Like everything that was bad made him feel good.
Yeah, and then of course that's there. We see the real Walt for the beginning of this show, and so that's why we're like, well, dude, what are you doing, man? Now, if you started off with the very first episode where you see him walking over to Jesse Pinkman, and he's like, hey, let's do meth. Let's make meth. You'd be like, okay, I don't know. So what? Okay, they're making meth, but you have a few episodes where he's kind of like just been beaten down by the news of his cancer and how they said you have around 6 months to live, and he's sitting there like already working at the car dealership place to clean cars and whatnot, the car wash place, just for extra money because he's that low on money. So when he started doing the meth thing, I remember thinking, well, yeah, this is interesting. I like this, and I'm kind of approving it in some weird way for you. And it's funny how you do that because it's meth is, from what we've been told, is like, it's like heroin and meth are like the top mean ones right there. It's like, oh well, it's just marijuana. It's just coffee or alcohol. No, no, no. This is like cocaine and speed and then ecstasy and then also heroin and meth and just like, oh Jesus, at the top now. So it's disgusting and despicable, and you see the life of how it. But I think the biggest takeaway, if I want to talk like any mom or dad into watching it, or any person, I'd say first of all, it's the quality of the show is 10 out of 10, so it's hard to be like, oh well, it's stupid. No, well, it's not stupid, just maybe I don't like it. And then the biggest takeaway that I got from it, and I don't know what you got, David, is the negative consequences that being a meth creator and just around the meth life, the negative consequences. There was pretty much no positive consequences, even with Walter White. The only thing I could say, which would be, and this is subjective, definitely, the positive thing that happened is he made a lot of money. But guess what happened? He alienated everyone in his family because of it. So, is that what you consider success in life? I don't think so.
No. What's weird is he's the main character. The show's about drugs. He never did meth once in the entire show. It's kind of, I always thought that was weird.
He's a scientist. He's like that when they kind of explain like the gray matter thing. They lied at the very end when they were saying, oh yeah, the only reason why we got gray matter is because we mix our names. That's pretty much all he was to do with it. But we know that he actually was the majority of making it, and then the whole love triangle happened, and it kind of made things all happen. So then And then they said, oh, well, he didn't do much, and he's like, oh, I'll show them. And luckily, the cool thing about this whole arc that we know from the Breaking Bad thing is even though he's a piece of crap and everything, he does all these things. At the end of the day, he still is able to allow for his family to get $9 million from a trust fund, a fake trust fund that was made by the gray matter people. So it was genius, and I hope that, and I'm guessing, because I saw an interview where Gilligan was saying, like, he was trying to be optimistic, but we never get a clear answer if like Skylar immediately didn't, like, oh, well, is this from Walt? I mean, is this did he do something like this? Because I can see him doing this because he did things like this whenever he was alive. So, or did the cops, like, eventually, like, oh, something's weird? But I want to think that through all of his bull crap that he did, at least his original vision came prosperous, and it was effective, and it worked, and then he kind of got his, I don't know, his peace in some kind of way, knowing, because it seemed like since he made everything all work at the end, when he was dying, he seemed like he actually, like, was, like, good to go, like, okay, you know what, I did everything I needed to do, I'm content now, I'm happy, let's do this. But
Yeah, he almost knew he was gonna die. It seemed like that day.
yes, and his little contraptions that he does, his little robotic contraptions, it just shows, like, this is not just a guy. This is a guy. He's not just a chemistry teacher either. He's not like, oh, I know what these chemicals kind of mean. He actually knows exactly what they'll do. If I do. And you see this throughout all these episodes too. You see how meticulous he is at everything. If you just do a single drop more, you will destroy the beautiful creation that we have been spending hours creating. And he just gets so pissed off and just so passionate. And you're thinking, like, well, yeah, you are that scientist, that chemist who knows your stuff so well. That's why you're able to make the best meth, like, ever invented. And I'm not sure what I remember they had a number, but it seemed like it was
Point like 7 or something like that.
yeah,
Purity.
yes, and I'm not sure what the original one is, but it was like 20, 30, 40% less than that, wasn't it? It wasn't even, like, close. It wasn't like, oh, we do 91%.
Yeah, or 91. It was definitely noticeably different. But, like, they never even really explain how he knew how to make meth. Is it just, like, something natural chemists know how to do?
I'd imagine
Like,
so. I'd imagine so because he probably knows the chemicals that are in a lot of things, like medicine and what, because because when you think of a chemist, what I'm thinking of is a witch that has all these ingredients into the big old cauldron, and she's mixing everything up in there, and she knows exactly what she's making in there, and then all of a sudden here comes a big old demon, aka meth.
yeah. Yeah. Real quick on the point, like, the biggest takeaway from the show, like, I would say being too prideful or greedy, I guess, with Walter. Like, because even the gray matter people offered him a job, and he's like, he could have been good to go right there and just, like, taken the job and gotten paid so much more than a teacher, and gotten the insurance and all that for his cancer. He just is like, no, I'm gonna do it my way, myself. I don't need your help, and just, like, that's prideful right there. Right?
Yeah, and then of course, I mean, he is right. I mean, he did do it himself. I mean, he became the biggest meth kingpin, and he was able to kill the one they call the Gustavo Fringe. I mean, he did that, and he didn't do it in like I'm going to shoot you in the head kind of way. He did it in like I'm going to allow someone who hates you more than I do to blow themselves up, Hector, and while ding 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 doing his little thing, and blow himself up, knowing that he had the opportunity to kill the man who pretty much was secretly behind destroying Hector's whole thing in the first place. So it's kind of like one of those, like, well, we'll go take each other out, but I'm happy. And then when you see the amazing scene of him just walking out, and you see the beautiful, just like how, like, he's very subtle, just straightening his tie, and you're like, what? Like, how are you alive? Like, that, you're right next to it, and then all of a sudden it pans over to the right side of him, and he looks like Two-Face, but all the way down, and then instead of him just kind of like, he just has a graceful fall, and he dies. I mean, it was like, well, they're the coolest, one of the coolest villains of all time, and he died in one of the coolest ways of all time.
Even though it was totally unrealistic, he would have never walked up like that.
Right.
It was still cool to see.
I mean, and I saw the interview there saying, yeah, we wanted to kind of keep the same characteristics because they were afraid that if they had him like walking like, it was going to be like, oh, that's not the Gustavo that we, he kind of died like, kind of died like a normal person. He didn't die like, like Gustavo would die. So I just, this is the man who also poisoned himself drinking that tequila to bring to that guy that killed his brother.
That was a good episode.
Yes, it was a very good episode. And then you see he drinks the same stuff, and you're like, oh, and then he goes and throws up, and that's what he's willing to do. But he's so, like I said, he's not gonna go over there and cry chop you in the throat and kill you.
Yeah,
And yeah, he's just subtle with everything, and that's like everything. Even when he's for the most part pissed off, he's just so subtle about it, and that's what is so scary about him because you're like, oh, you're capable of anything because it's obvious you're very secure with yourself because you're subtle and because you're kind of just have this way of just kind of gliding around the room. But then that part whenever he gets so pissed off at Walt and Jesse for screwing him over, and then when he kills his like right hand man right in front of him, he cuts his throat and he's just holding him and he's just kind of behind him just like holding him while he's cutting his throat. I remember thinking, "Oh, you're scary, man. You're a scary, scary villain." Yeah, but Giancarlo Esposito, he's the man. I remember watching him, and he's completely different. This is how you know you can find a good actor when you can see someone who you've seen them in other movies and they're just talking, doing their thing, and then all of a sudden they're in a movie where you can't really tell it's them because their mannerisms and everything's different. He's one of those actors. If you watch some of his earlier work, you're like, oh my gosh, that's Giancarlo Esposito. That's Gustavo. They're like, Gustavo? How? It's like, it's him. It's him. I promise. Yeah. There's a thing. Do the Right Thing. Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, and he plays this guy who's just very loud and obnoxious, just constantly talking. He plays like just very loud. But like, oh, how dare you do that? And you're sitting there going like, okay, you're obnoxious. And then
Who told you to buy a brownstone on my block in my neighborhood on my side of the street? Yo, what you want to live in a black neighborhood for anyway?
A white guy steps on his sneakers, and it's kind of a Spike Lee. If you've watched these Spike Lee movies, he has a lot of racial controversies that he mixes together because he's trying to kind of teach the world like, hey, we still have a lot of crap going on, but it is possible. His movies are really good, but this is a prime example of Giancarlo's acting, and you see him in that, and then you see him in this, and he's just so different. And I call him the silent predator. I always call him the silent predator. I don't know why I call him that, but ever since I saw him cut the guy's throat, I remember I just like, oh, silent predator.
I haven't seen too much of his other work besides Mandalorian and this show, but in Better Call Saul, of course. But,
yep.
Yeah, he's a great actor. Mm-hmm. Makes you believe the role he's in. And he sneaks all the drugs in through his chicken restaurant.
Oh, like through his like, he's so professional. He's so like, welcome.
Right? Yeah.
What's that?
The Chicken Brothers.
Oh yeah, the Chicken Brothers. And that's such a good name, and of course it represents his brother who passed away, and you find out, and the good thing about Gustavo is obviously I'm sure he wasn't. What's that?
Was that his brother that died when they showed the flashback? Or just a friend that was coworker?
I believe it was his brother. I think it was his brother because he made a reference to the Chicken Brother thing being their cover up.
Okay.
And sadly, the first, because I saw the show 2 times, and the first time I did not pick up that they were brothers. I actually thought they were lovers, sadly enough, and I think I even told you that they were lovers. But then I watched it the second time.
They were super friendly. You're like, geez, they really like each other.
Yes.
But they must. It makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I get, I assumed it's like, oh, they're hugging each other. They're holding each other. They're gay. But no, they were brothers, which, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Even though you had to work with them all the time, it's like they didn't even really need to kill him. They're just showing their power. Yeah.
Well, there was a part when, and it happened a couple times, and it's only because like I said, Walt is a cancer, and I don't mean that physically, because he did have cancer, but no, Walt was a cancer to everyone else, and he pretty much anyone who he came in contact with throughout the show, like Gustavo, Mike, what a wonderful character he is, and he had a crappy ending because of stupid Walt too. All these people you find out they're great stories. Like Gustavo, yes, he's a bad guy, but yet he's an honorable bad guy. Mike, yes, he's a bad guy, but he's an honorable bad guy. All these guys have certain kind of Tico. No, he's not an honorable bad guy at all. Hector, no, no.
Bad guy.
What's
I
that?
would say Mike's not even much of a bad guy.
No. I mean, yeah, he did a lot of illegal things, but he was one of the most morally uncorrupt people in the whole show. I mean, the way that he was such a stickler on like, oh no, these people will be paid because they are in jail right now, and they are part of this. And I told them I'd take care of their families if anything happened to them, and they went in jail. So they did go to jail, and they kept their mouths shut. So I will be continue paying that. And you find out, luckily, even more in Better Call Saul, he is really just the ultimate like honorable character. He made some mistakes with his son, and it kind of allowed for him to kind of start approaching, because when his son died, he started approaching his daughter-in-law and then his granddaughter, and it kind of allowed for him to start making a lot more money, and that's when he started becoming a crook, because he obviously was a police officer, but he became a crook because he knew exactly how to do it correctly. But yeah, he never really he didn't kill anyone just for the heck of it. He was not ever inhumane to people. He was a good guy that did bad things. That's the best way to put him. But whenever he did that thing where him and Jesse were trying to get out, and Walt was starting to get pissed off, and he's like, oh, and then so Mike was leaving, and then Walt shot him, and I remember thinking, no, here's yet another reason to hate you, Walt, because you killed another. I mean, like I said, he's besides Hank being, even though Hank's obnoxious, Hank was probably the best honorable guy on there, but in terms of the bad guys, it was easily Mike. I mean, like I said, like you even said it a minute ago. You said bad guy, because yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of his he was morally good. He just did dumb. I mean, he did bad things, but he did it in a way it was like, oh, it's a job. I'm doing it. I'm getting the money. I'm giving all that money to my family, his daughter-in-law and his granddaughter, and it was all about them. It had nothing to do with him and himself. If you saw you saw throughout all the stuff, he just kind of sits in his house and kind of just watches TV. He doesn't have flashy cars or anything like that. He doesn't do anything. He's not materialistic in any kind of way. He just spends all that money on the people that have his fellow crooks and whatnot, and then his family. And so a morally good character that sadly was also poisoned by Walter's just presence.
Yeah, he was putting aside money for his granddaughter. I remember like $1 million or something.
Yeah, absolutely. But David, I think maybe the best character that sadly the most broken, but yet maybe the most at least trying to be optimistic, but then all of a sudden goes on a drug binge or a stupid party binge, but he's just one of the coolest characters that you're just hoping.
Jesse?
Yes, sir, Jesse.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, who was your favorite and your least favorite character? So Jesse's your favorite?
I mean,
There's quite a few.
there is quite a few. That's the brilliant thing. Like, if you like a Game of Thrones question, who's your favorite character? Can I think about that for a while, because I really need to, and I'm being serious, because there's probably 8 characters that I very much would say are my favorite character. Breaking Bad, there's probably 3, and I would say probably Jesse at the end of the day, just because his suffering, it hurt my heart a lot. Just constantly seeing him suffer through all the crap that he's seen, that he's done.
I don't know what's wrong with me, Mr. White. I don't know how I could be so stupid.
Stop that now. Come on.
You see, you see when he's doing his drugs, he's just hiding because he hates his life, because he knows he's a loser. But yet you still see him trying to make these morally right decisions that he makes whenever he sees that one kid get shot by Todd. Is that what you said?
Yeah, is that who it was?
Yeah, Todd. Thank you, Todd. So whenever Todd shoots that little kid on the motorcycle because he sees them,
Yeah,
and you see right before he's about to pull a gun out, and Jesse sees it, and he just goes no, and then immediately that is what causes him and Mike to leave their group and stop doing it. That is proof in the pudding that Jesse, even though he is, and I'll talk about that in a second, is screwed up. He's still at the end of the day trying to be a good man. And Mike, of course, his character is pretty awesome too. And then that's just another thing. Oh, look what happened because of the circumstances of what you guys do. Yes, you guys are making a lot of money, but you guys are killing people literally. Whenever Jane died, David, this haunts me. When Jane died, and her dad was so heartbroken and he couldn't sleep that and he was a flight controller. He caused two planes to crash into each other, and everyone died because of his grief, because of the actions of Walter White, and because of the actions of doing drugs in general. And this is a perfect example why, even because Breaking Bad, for example, doesn't have really, really bad words. It's not like Game of Thrones bad words. It doesn't show nudity the way that it's like a PG-13 kind of thing, and bad words are earned in this, and that's something that's I very much appreciate when people just say bad words for the heck of it, unless it's like a gangster and that's kind of just his way. That's his character, and they say bad words. Typically, I don't like hearing bad words unless they're used properly. But Breaking Bad, they don't really have too many bad words. There's no. The only time you really see intense things is sadly just character decisions that cause really crappy things to happen, and that's what makes the most effective kind of show.
Yeah, Jesse loses two girlfriends. They both get killed. One gets shot, one overdoses.
Oh.
And they're both because of Walt, of course.
Oh man! Oh, that part whenever he escapes from Todd and he goes and tries to see them, and then Todd he makes it there pretty much right after, and then he just says, "Hey, guess what? There's gonna be a consequence for that." And then he has Jesse watch while he goes over there and says, "Hey, I'm Jesse. I'm Jesse's friend." And then she's like, "Oh, is he okay?" And then he just gets behind her and shoots her in the back of the head. And then it just kind of like looks at Jesse like, "Oh, sorry, man, but that's what happens."
Yep. Some hard stuff to watch in the show, yeah, for sure. That was one of them. And just to see how bad his family falls apart, and like when he's trying to save them in that second to last episode, like, come on, we gotta get out of here, let's go. And then like his wife's trying to stab him with a knife, and his kid's like blocking it, and it's like, gosh, look how far he's fallen from the beginning, from a happy guy. It's just like, yeah.
Oh man, because Junior throughout pretty much the whole thing, Junior is like, "Hey, Mom, you better leave Dad alone because he's going through a lot of crap right now," and he's just defending him. And then finally, whenever Walt Jr. finds out that who his dad is, and then like I said, when he goes and and he has to doesn't he have a knife? Or she has a knife or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, she has a knife.
Go away. Leave us alone. Yeah.
And then when
kind of find out that he's responsible for Hank dying.
Oh,
Like,
man.
Hank, they thought he was getting arrested, remember? Then he comes in, they're like, wait, why are you here? I thought you were going to jail. But they're like, where's Hank? Like, where's Hank? Like,
that's right. That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
That was hard, man. And there's this show has, I mean, I might be exaggerating, but what, 20 really hard things like that you watch and you're just like, and it just weighs on you, and these characters weigh on you after a while, and the biggest thing I would repeat over and over again is if you took Walt out of the equation, everyone else in that equation would have been alive and well. Now, he did take out a lot of bad guys too, but I'm sure those bad guys probably would have done as many bad things if Walt wouldn't have in some way been a part of their life. So it's funny how the hero he's never not a hero. The main character that we watch, we see this guy who at first is kind of a hero to us because like, oh cool, you're doing some crazy stuff, but you're doing it for. I mean, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I have thoughts every once in a while, like, well, I want, what would happen? What would happen to my family if something happened? And it is these kind of questions and stuff are are in my mind a lot, and I think I'm sure it's like that for everyone, and so it's easy for me to somewhat believe and to almost allow for him to continue. But then, like I said, but the beautiful thing about this show too is it's going to say, hey, we're dealing with drugs here, guys, and I promise you, we're not going to be like, hey, drugs are bad, but we're going to have a happy ending, because that's not realistic. So let's have drugs are bad and consequences are bad too. So yeah, it's Game of Thrones was, if it would have stuck its landing, it would have probably been my favorite show of all time, because the subject matter is more my style, like dragons and witches and war. Yeah, you and I, we love that stuff, but is meth. Like I said, I don't. And then they teach you how to pretty much make meth in the show. That's how really accurate
How to deal drugs, basically.
Right, yeah. Do everything correctly, and it's kind of disgusting, but it's also like, hey, it's like I'm watching a documentary with the best actors in the world. It's crazy.
Some of the stuff in there is like, geez, I would never even thought to do that, like putting the drugs inside the chicken stuff. Yeah, it's like, well, good idea. It's putting a little ultraviolet light thing that you would know which ones have the drugs in them, and it's like, gosh, you guys have some drug dealers are smarter than they appear, right? In some ways.
and the thing is that's another good thing about the show too, David, is typically when you think of drug dealers, you think of jackasses like Jesse walking around being the jackass, but you don't ever think about like, hey, let's make a movie or a TV show about a genius who happens to know how to make drugs the best way drugs are supposed to be made. Like, hey, let's have this thing that is, you mix bleach and whatever, I don't know, the worst of things that you mix together to make meth. But let's find out the exact way of taking a certain chemical and putting this chemical with it, but not too much of this chemical, but enough to allow this chemical to kind of like open up itself, and then that's what you get, some kind of whatever high you get from. And it's just whoever came up with this idea was like, oh, I get what you're doing. You're not making a drug movie. You're making a movie like just like this very interesting, like thriller, like this like five seasons of dramatic thriller that's just like ongoing, like a genius that ends up loving his stuff so much that he ends up like loving himself, and he becomes Heisenberg, and he just like where Skylar's like, I was worried about you, they were calling, and he's like, they were calling, Skylar, I'm the one who knocks, and I'm like,
yeah, I'm the danger.
Yeah, I'm the danger.
Stop trying to justify this whole thing and admit you're in danger.
Who are you talking to right now? Who is it you think you see? Do you know how much I make a year? I mean, even if I told you, you wouldn't believe it. Do you know what would happen if I suddenly decided to stop going into work? A business big enough that it could be listed on the NASDAQ goes belly up. Disappears. It ceases to exist without me. No, you clearly don't know who you're talking to, so let me clue you in. I am not in danger, Skylar. I am the danger. A guy opens his door and gets shot, and you think that of me? No. I am the one who knocks.
And I'm like, oh, geez, man, you're loving your own sauce right now. And I remember because he was trying to make her feel better by saying that, but you just heard more egotistic bullcrap come out of his mouth, and of course she heard that, and she's like, oh, okay, you now I feel worse. Thanks.
Yeah. So what was your least favorite character like on the show? Like the ones you like, when they're on screen, I don't want to see you.
I like to ask this question. Is it acting wise, or just the character itself makes me cringe or whatever?
The character.
Okay, because I was saying, because there really was not bad acting with anyone that I can think of. So,
No.
I would say my least favorite character was, I can't even remember, Marie. Marie was my least favorite character. I felt like, because because Hank was a really good character, very fleshed out, and I felt like they were trying to give her something to do. And yes, she was Skylar's sister, and I get that.
Yeah.
But then when they were trying to give her that whole little like, oh, she steals everything, I just felt like, you and I have talked about this many times. I just felt like they were just trying to just do whatever they
Force
could.
story.
They were forcing a story within her, and it's something you
Yeah.
see within most TV shows where you're like, okay, I don't care, but that's with like
Yeah.
all the characters. But luckily with Breaking Bad, that's pretty much far and few
Yeah.
in between. But it's one of those things. I felt like her character throughout the start to the finish was like she's about ready to say something. I don't care, and then like oh she's stealing. Oh, that's because no one cares about her character, but they can't just write her off like, oh, let's not show her, because it would be kind of like weird. Like, well, okay, but she and the actor is fine. I had no problem with her at all. She was great, but I felt like they were trying to make her do these like things, and like they gave her like oh, purple was everywhere. She was kind of obnoxious with these like, oh, it must be this way and this way. So they were trying to make her kind of just like annoying, but yet a good person. But at the end of the day, I just found her to be annoying. What about you, bud?
I would take the easy answer and say like any of the Nazi guys. I hated all them.
No,
But
yeah.
I guess like if I had to pick, besides the main Nazi leader, I guess Todd was kind of annoying. Because he was like, you wanted to like him, but he was just like, because he was like a dumb bad guy kind of, but he would just kill people, like the kid. He killed the kid and didn't even act like it mattered.
Oh,
Yeah.
don't bring that
So
up,
probably
please.
then he was like in the El Camino was like you could tell he had gained weight and aged. It was just it didn't really. It felt weird.
He was doing The Irishman at the same time, and he had to gain weight for that movie. But so it was just kind of it was like one of those like he was doing it as a favor for Vince Gilligan, and I'm sure not a favor because I mean no one's gonna say no to him now after making the best show of all time. But he was kind of saying, hey, I'm already kind of belong to Martin Scorsese, but I can do some filming for you, but I've gained a lot of weight, and they're like, yeah, that's fine. So yeah, I get what you're saying. In the when you saw him in the was it fifth season, or I think it was maybe the end of the fourth or beginning of the fifth, you see him, and yeah, he was thin, and just uglier version of Matt Damon. I called him at that point, but then when you start seeing him in other things like Fargo, the TV show Fargo, and you started seeing like, oh, this guy's a very good actor. He was in The Master too. He was Philip Seymour Hoffman's son in it, because he looks a lot like him. And he started gaining a little bit more weight, and then he married Kirsten Dunst though. So he may be a hefty laddie, but yeah, he is married to her right now as we speak.
That's impressive.
So yeah,
Because they're both redheads, right? No, I don't.
it's about love, David.
Yep. Let's see. What other questions did I have for you? Did we already answer the hardest episode to watch? If we did, then what's your favorite episode to watch, or like coolest episode that you saw that you can remember?
Well, I mean, anything like cool would be the maybe the wrong word usage, because there's really
Yeah.
never a time. It's very rare when I'm thinking, "Oh, cool, good job." I mean, I guess
Murder, cool.
Yeah, yeah, right. I mean, I guess, and I was always what I was rooting for the most is I was just rooting for Jesse to get out of it, because I was tired, because Walt was in it, and then every time Jesse tried to leave, Walt would bring him back in. It was bull crap what he was doing. He was manipulating him, and he was doing like Jesse called him Mr. White throughout the whole show. Besides, I think 2 times he called him Walt or Walt. But he called him Mr. White, which is to tell Walter, I see you as my father. And so whenever he would give him suggestions or like manipulate him, Jesse was just so like torn. He didn't know what to believe. So he just like, fine, whatever. But so that, yeah, there's really no like, yeah. But I guess after, my favorite one. I mean, I guess as cliche as it sounds, is probably the very last episode. In fact, it was something, because I really felt, David, no matter what, I will not feel good about I guess the journey of this show if Walt stays alive in some kind of way. I did not. I don't want that. I don't like that. So the fact that they ended it they ended it with him.
Jail, would that have been okay for you?
If they did
He
what?
have to die? If he went to jail, would that have been okay for you, or did he have to die? which was a possibility. I'm sure they could.
Man, I know he needed to die because, like I told you many times throughout this podcast, he was a poison to a lot of people. He wasn't at first. If he would have died after like season 2 or 3, I would have been like, yeah, he was a bad guy, but yeah, poor Walt, whatever. But when you start seeing things, especially like 4 and 5, you're like, okay, no, dude, I despise you as a human. And I don't want to see him like be burned to death or anything like that. I don't want to see him tortured because I like Walt. I liked Walt. That's why I was so pissed off at him constantly because I liked him. I want him to be like, I'm an idiot. Like you said earlier, I'm an idiot. I'm going to stop doing this. But he didn't. So he kept on hurting people in the process of doing that. And so take him that jail. I get it. I would have been like, okay. But the good thing though is before he did die, he did right a lot of wrongs. He did right wrongs with Jesse, which of course the family was the most important thing, but in terms of the show, the two main characters are not Skylar and Junior and Holly, the baby. It's Jesse and Walt. So I cared more about Jesse's character than I did about Skylar. And whenever he wronged Jesse by telling the stupid Nazi craps that he was underneath the car hiding. It was just and Hank just got done getting shot and killed, and since Walt was so pissed off, he's like, no, I'm going to go ahead and screw up Jesse too. And then he saw Jesse at the end, and luckily he had that idea that he had, and he killed everyone, and then he kind of told Jesse like, hey, I'm sorry, and then Jesse had that gun, and he was going to maybe shoot him, but then he saw Walt was shot, and then he kind of realized like, no, this is my decision, and I'm not you. I'm not a piece of crap like you are. And then hopefully that's kind of where he kind of got somewhat of his like weight off of him, because he had a lot of the crap reason why he was being, and he was, like I said, he was a loser beforehand, David, but.
Who was Jesse or Walt?
Jesse? No, Walt was not a loser. Walt was cool, but Jesse was a loser beforehand. But at the end of the day, Jesse was the one who had more heart and more good decision making and good moral judgment, even though he was a moron, and even though he not a moron, because it kind of shows at the end he's making good meth too, but he's
killing the assistant lab guy. What was his name again?
Gale.
Yeah. I was like, that was a hard one to watch too.
Yeah, I like Gale. Gale was charming.
Is that how season 3 ended or season 4 ended? It was just like,
It would have been season
3. Because 4.
No, it might have been season 2. The very last episode of season 2, because I think the beginning of season 3 was.
I think it's the end of 3.
Okay.
Well, maybe you're right. Let me double check. Wait, end of 3, not the 2, because I'm rewatching it again as we speak, and I'm on season 3 episode like 7 or something.
Oh, okay.
It hasn't happened yet. And we could briefly mention the Fly episode, and I'm going through this. You either love it or hate it. It sounds like, and I was not really a lover of it, but I understood it because he was such a perfectionist. He didn't want a single thing to ruin his meth, but. Let's hear your side of it.
You know, I want to say something about it.
I know you got
No, and I get it. It's, if you look at the Breaking Bad, like if you go to IMDb or pretty much any kind of rating places, you'll see that I forget what the episode's called, but it's the one where they spend the whole episode. It's called The Fly. It's called The Fly. They spend the whole episode in their work zone down in that basement that was created just for them to make meth, and there's a fly that's flying around, and so the whole episode they're trying to catch the fly, and Jesse the whole time is just pissed off, going, this is a waste of time, who cares? And I defend this episode to the death, because it really showed to a T the exact reason why Walter White is such a brilliant chemist, because he truly loves and is so passionate about the science behind what makes meth so effective, that he is willing to say, do you realize this will taint the purity of the product? And of course it would taint it like nothing, but that's not how he's looking at it, and that's just kind of. And even though the episode itself is ridiculous, and Jesse kind of sees him for being ridiculous, it still kind of proves the fact that Walter White is a genius, and this it makes this whole episode more concrete and makes it more realistic and believable.
Yeah, it's weird because they were cooking in an RV, which is probably totally messy, dirty, and like all of a sudden he cares about a fly. But looks like IMDb, it's the lowest rated episode of the season, 7.8.
Okay.
All the others are 8.5 or higher, pretty much.
Of course, yeah.
I told you this before that it might have been a budget reason they did this episode because they were low on money for whatever reason, that they needed to have a cheaper episode where they just kept it in the one room the entire episode. But who knows? It could have been one to build up his character and show how particular he was. So.
Oh, if you ever look up behind the scenes of any movie or TV show, you'll find 900 million little things that were supposed to be something different, but then ended up being that for some weird reason or whatnot. But it's funny how something could change. Sadly, Ryan Johnson directed that episode. Funny enough, and he also directed Last Jedi, as you all know who like Star Wars or don't like it anymore. But he's allowed for those 3 story arcs to be garbage. So I thought he added one of the best episodes in terms of content for Walt, but then destroyed the content for Luke Skywalker. So would I say there's like a little mishmash? No, because he ruined Star Wars for a while. So
yeah, don't remind me of him. Jeez.
I know, seriously. All right, guys. Well, I think we're going to close it on that note. I think we discussed pretty much everything we could possibly discuss. I think the biggest thing I want to throw out there is just I find that this is maybe going to be the wow killer, but for TV shows, where to this day we're still waiting for something to be better. And I welcome any challenger to come. Game of Thrones was probably going to be able to be the winner, but then they decided to go ahead and at the end there. And then Tank,
close second place, I would say, right? Is that what you have?
I mean, it has to be second place. It has to be second. When I talk about anything, and especially in my podcast, I always say, "Hey, if it has Game of Thrones quality, then I'm okay with that." So obviously, I have nothing but love for Game of Thrones. It's just so much of a bummer that they took such an epic storytelling and then dumbed it down at the end. But I don't know.
You know, a show's good. It's so good you don't really want to watch it again. You're like, it's so good, but it's so hard to watch because it's like, I don't want to see their family fall apart and him get worse and worse. Kind of like some stuff in Game of Thrones. Like I've said before, the Red Wedding, you don't want to rewatch that episode ever.
Even though it's great quality, yeah. It's when you're seeing a lady getting stabbed, knowing that there's a baby inside of her. It's something that that's Game of Thrones. That's one thing about Game of Thrones that you talk about your hater thing. When I see anything happen to a baby, it makes me want to just scream and pull my hair out and run outside and just not ever see something like that happen again. So it's in Game of Thrones, almost every episode has something like that happen. So Breaking Bad, at the end of the day, it is the best show of all time, and there are great shows like Sopranos and Sherlock, and there's a lot of amazing shows throughout the years that, like Doctor Who, a lot of people love their Doctor Who that have been going on for 40 years, but I still, in my opinion, Breaking Bad is the best show of all time, and we'll see if anything can beat it.
Yeah, and we both agree on that one. Usually we're little off on our rankings, but this is one show, top 2 shows all time we both agree on, so that's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. And that shows you kind of too, like the power of the show. So, and my whole family, we talk about Breaking Bad like it's part of our normal culture. So it's something that's been very influential in a lot of other stuff too. And I'm glad that we got to talk about it today, Bud. And thank you so much for doing that. I appreciate it.
Hopefully you guys enjoyed the intro. It was pretty.
Oh man.
It was more tough on Nick than me, so.
Oh man, it's very easy for me to do silly things, but I feel like I look okay still. I'm 36, but that's whitey tighties. I haven't worn whitey tighties since the days of wearing Spider-Man whitey tighties. So, and I don't think I never went through the transition of wearing whitey tighties. I don't think so. It's just like the the white ones with the cool graphic with the little red outline, and then
Yep.
boxer briefs. I don't think I ever did white ties, so I was already uncomfortable. But I knew it was like, well, this is something that it's probably the most, I guess, watched or like, most like, remembered thing about the show is like, oh man, I remember the first time you see him take off his clothes, and he's like, well, what are you guys doing? I'm like, well, I'm. What do you mean? What am I doing? I don't want to smell like a meth lab. And like, well, I go home too. You know, and it's like, oh well, it's just kind of immediately showing like, oh, what kind of characters we have. Jesse is a disgusting, loser, like ooh, druggy loser, and then Walt's a distinguished, like classy family man. So it's just kind of immediately kind of shows the demeanor. But it was I hope you all liked it. Me looking at it, I'm just like, oh man, and it makes me kind of go like, okay, I guess we're gonna do it. And I don't do that with anything. As David, we do all of our filming and all of our weird adventures we've ever had. I pretty much never get like weirded out about that kind of stuff, but I definitely was a little bit this time. And then people driving by too, yeah, that was fun.
I was like, there's someone coming, hurry, do it.
I'm trying to get the whole like, here we go. Like, but Nick, they're there, they're right. Okay, I'm still. Okay, here we go. So
Yeah, we tried to walk far away enough so no one would see us, but I think a few people might have caught a glance. I'm not sure.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and I'm glad like we live so close because we like to do silly stuff like that. We always have been doing it for 20 years now. We've been doing it since high school, so it's something that we're still doing it, and I'm gonna try to do it as long as I can. So thanks, David, for coming on. As usual, you're one of my favorites. I love it. So thank you, bud. Appreciate it.
Of course.
All
Thanks
right.
for having me.
Of course, buddy. Of course. Well, take care, everyone. We'll discuss our topic for the next time. I'm excited. All right. Take care, guys.
See ya.
The Nerd Frenzy Podcast.